Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our Plugged In webinar series. And thank you for attending today's Questline Digital webinar, Boost Customer Engagement with AI. My name is Maureen Murky, and I'm the technical producer and host of today's webinar. At Questline Digital, we are focused on bringing value to energy providers by improving the customer experience and achieving program goals. Before we begin, we want to cover a few important housekeeping items with you. First, we love an engaged audience. If you have any questions during the webcast, we encourage you to submit them through the Q&A section, which is located at the lower right of the presentation window. Don't be shy, our presenters love questions. In fact, we are doing a knock your socks off promotion. If you ask a question during today's discussion, you'll receive a free pair of Questline Digital socks. Very exciting thing. We'll try to answer all of your questions during the webcast, but if a more in-depth answer is needed, or if we run out of time, we will connect with you via email to answer your question. We also have the attendee chat open today. Please feel free to use this function to chat with other attendees about what's standing out to you in the presentation, ask any questions, or just to network. To get started, go ahead and drop in where you are tuning in from. I am live from Columbus, Ohio today. We will also be conducting poll questions throughout the presentation, and I hope that you'll join the fun and participate. These polls will help all of us to discover valuable insights and key takeaways on today's topic. To view those poll results, you can also access the polls tab to the left of your screen. Habla usted español? Parlez-vous français? English not your native language? Check out our closed captioning feature for more options. We have 12 languages available. We want to ensure that your webinar experience is as seamless as possible. Since some networks may cause slides to advance more slowly than others, we recommend locking off of your VPN. If your slides fall behind, simply press F5 to refresh the page. If you're a Mac user, use Command R. It's that easy. Finally, look for a follow-up email in your inbox this week. You'll receive the PowerPoint presentation and a playback link to the webinar recording. Now, let me introduce today's presenters. Brian Lindemood is VP of Marketing and Content Strategy at Questline Digital. He leads the team that delivers engaging educational content solutions and digital marketing campaigns for energy utilities. Previously, Brian was Director of Content Marketing for Manta Media, one of the largest online communities for small business owners, where he worked to empower business owners with expert advice and educational resources around digital marketing. Zach Hardison is a strategy and innovation expert with more than 15 years of experience solving complex problems within healthcare, energy, technology, and financial services from concept to execution. He's an advocate of human-centered design, an idea provocateur, and believes in progress over perfection. With a passion for new and emerging technology, he loves contemporary methods of storytelling and coffee shop conversations. Before we get started, let's take a run through our agenda. In today's webinar, we'll hear from Brian and Zach about what exactly AI is, why we care about it now, the benefits, the use cases, and the limitations of AI, plus the best practices. We'll see a lot of examples throughout that show how utilities are using AI today and opportunities to expand its use. We'll then end with a 10 to 15-minute Q&A discussion to learn more. Before I pass it off, though, to Zach and Brian, I would like to open up a first poll question for all of you. So let me open that up for you now. You should all see it opening up. The question is, what areas or use cases interest you most about AI? Your options are call center, chatbot, dynamic newsletter or relevant content, energy usage tracking / predicting, understanding customer preferences, or making my role more efficient. So go ahead and choose one answer about what is interesting you the most about AI currently. I'll give it a few minutes to let those answers roll in. And just a reminder, as we get ready to learn from Brian and Zach, put your thinking caps on, come up with some great questions to ask, because a free pair of socks are on the line. They're really great socks. All right, those answers are rolling in. I'm going to let those settle here for just a minute. All right, it looks like we've slowed down. Oh, somebody just got in. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close out that poll. You can see all of those responses in your polls tab. But it looks like most of you are interested in understanding customer preferences with AI, followed very closely behind, though, with energy usage tracking and predicting. The great thing is today we are going to talk about all of these things. So with that, I will go ahead and pass it off to Zach to tell us more. Zach, take it away.
Thank you, Maureen, and thank you, everybody, for giving us some time today. To kick it off, let's start with a little bit of foundational learning on just what is AI, just high-level overview, so we all have a working definition of how we're going to be talking about it this afternoon. So artificial intelligence, as simply put, it's the machine's ability to perform the cognitive functions we usually associate with human minds. Now, the human mind obviously can do quite a bit. The AI cannot do just as much as the human mind yet, but it's certainly getting better and better every day. More so if you pay attention to the news cycles, you can see that it's just advancing by leaps and bounds. So a subset of AI that we want to cover is machine learning, often abbreviated to ML if you see it around. Simply on this, when machine learning refers to when AI algorithms are processing data and using models to identify patterns, they learn about it, they make predictions, they improve off of that. And then a subset even under machine learning is generative AI. So in news cycles around ChatGPT, Google's Bard, and things of that nature, that falls under the category of generative AI. So when you're training algorithms that use machine learning to create new data or new information, it actually ends up creating something quite new for you. So a really simple example out of machine learning is if you go into Google's search bar and you start typing a search string, it will drop down and give you a series of prompts on what it thinks you're going to type next. That is a very simple use case of machine learning. It is pulling all of the data that somebody is using in Google search bar and prompting you with what it thinks is going to come next based on how many people are searching for that particular search string. It also takes into your own user behavior, but it is aggregating just massive amounts of data. So with any generative AI, it's important to note that it only learns and gets smarter and more accurate the more people use it. In other words, the more data that it has within it. And so there are many different ways that you can actually feed an AI different forms of data. So when ChatGPT came out, it was released late last year, I wanted to play around with it. So let's see what it can actually do. Like I'm sure many of you all was pretty interested. And my prompt, if you see on the screen, I wanted to see write a rap about the poem The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe in the style of Eminem. I will save you all my rap skills, but if you can read the text on the screen there, you can see that it actually did exactly what I wanted it to do. And you can pick your own Eminem style song, read along to the beat. I was pretty impressed with just how quickly it came up with something kind of off the wall and out of left field. And certainly in the months since then, it's only gotten smarter and smarter. But this leads into a good example of a generative AI is only as good as your prompts when asking it to do certain tasks or asking it certain questions. It gets better and more accurate the more specific and the more detailed you are when prompting the AI. And why do we care about AI now? So going back a little bit further from ChatGPT, AI has actually been around for quite some time. It just hasn't always been as prescient in our society and certainly news cycles as it has been in recent months. So for example, if you think back to when Netflix first began streaming content, they went, transitioned from DVDs to online. It started predicting what you wanted to watch and then recommending things that you haven't watched before. And how was it doing that? Well, it was basically doing it off of an AI algorithm that ran behind the scenes. So every time you watched one piece of content, it had already categorized and mapped all of the content in its library to then say, if you liked this, you'll probably like this as well. Let me make that recommendation to you. In addition to that, if you like the same piece of content that someone else does, it will recommend things that is in their top picks for you because it's trying to build a profile off of you and kind of build like-minded audiences. So it will serve those things up. And again, that started all the way back in 2007. Moving a little bit forward, if you all remember the news that came out when Watson, the computer system, won Jeopardy. There's a number of news headlines around supercomputers performing human tasks that were traditionally human tasks. There was a number of rounds similar to that where grand chess master champions were winning and then losing and then winning against supercomputers again. Again, just kind of putting the limits, testing the limits to what AI can do, and just playing around with it. And it was kind of rising to the surface in pop culture ways in that nature. Jumping forward to 2011, Apple introduced Siri into the iPhone. Siri is named Siri because at the time, and still a little bit now, they didn't want to call it an AI. It's a lot better for companies to introduce AI, especially public-facing ones and consumer-facing audiences, as much as they can either hide it or personify it. So in this case, they went that exact route. They gave it a name, they gave it a voice, and it was no longer trying to relay that you were talking to an AI in your phone. You were actually carrying Siri around in your pocket everywhere you went. So it's another way that it's been in our lives for quite some time, just kind of slipped under the radar a little bit. Of course, Amazon followed similar routes, releasing Amazon Alexa, again, going the personification route, and then all the way up until now with ChatGPT. Now, it's interesting with ChatGPT is that they didn't call it, give it a name. They didn't try to personify it. They just released it broad scale to the public. And one of the things that this has done has greatly enhanced the perception around AI in a positive nature. And so they open it up to everybody, just toy around with it, just on the example I showed you previously on my own prompt. What this does is greatly remove the apprehension and barriers around AI. If you can get around with it, you can play with it, you can do things that are silly, you can do things that are professional. It reduces that apprehension, it reduces that little scary factor that folks have around AI. And that's why you're suddenly seeing a lot more adoption into tools like this, because it has reduced just the stigma a lot around it, the barriers around it. A lot more people are willing to give it a test run and willing to try it out. So it's come quite a long way. And I think it's going to even go even much further than we think, a lot faster now that some of that stigma, like I said, has been reduced or even eliminated by giving folks a chance to play around with a little bit. So some of the benefits and use cases of AI, some of the more immediate ones, the one I always like to gravitate towards is it absolutely scales up your human efficiency. So if you think of all of the monotonous, repetitive, low-value tasks that a human may be responsible for, this ends up being a really great case for an AI because it gives the AI boundaries, it gives them structure, it gives them a box to play in, and they don't go outside of that box. That's the really one key thing about I always like to stress on any AI program that you create or that you take advantage of. It plays within the boundaries that you set. It will not go outside those parameters. So if you don't want it to do anything, if you don't want it to look at a certain data set or take any set action, you can program it in such a way where it will never do that. But it absolutely can offload, again, like all those said, those low value repetitive tasks. So anything administrative, any data crunching, large data sets, it certainly can do this much faster than a human. And this is one of the ways that we've seen a lot of benefit because it gives you, quite simply, gives you a lot more time back in your day and frees up your kind of human capital. So you can then put your humans on much more creative tasks, more creative, high value thinking and things of that nature. The other benefit I like to talk about is seeing common denominators among customers. So it's very easy to take a look at, a small subset of customers you might be looking at and seeing who engaged with what actions did they take that were similar. It gets much harder when you think about, let me do this across my entire footprint. Instead of hundreds or even thousands, let me do hundreds of thousands or let me do millions. And then you can start seeing patterns and trends that a human it would take them a massive amount of time to do. They would probably miss things just because of the sheer volume of data that they're looking at. And that way, the AI can pick up on things that you may not be seeing. If you program it again with a little machine learning in it, it can also recognize what you're trying to identify, what actions and what criteria you prioritize, and then it can get a little bit predictive. So you get into a little bit of propensity modeling in that regard. I know if customer A takes XYZ action, they're more likely to do this desired action over here. And so you can start creating some of those workflows and some of those use cases to know who's got a higher propensity based on the actions they're taking. And lastly, I touched on this a little bit a minute ago, but out of just time saving and convenience, you're seeing a lot of even just folks that are even playing around with some generative AI things or open tools out there. They're seeing just even small time savings, a few minutes here and there. There's usually a news article that comes out at least once a week about a small business that's taking advantage of AI to generate some of those time-saving benefits. In this case, it could be hours. They add up over to a single person or an entire team. And it's also great as just an assistant. That's where I see a lot of the convenience factors coming into play. It's a really great support tool for a lot of those low-level functions. If you needed to review something, check something, just be a second opinion, second pair of eyes. One of the best things I always like to say about AIs is that they don't get tired. They don't make mistakes in the sense of like human error, like they don't miss something that they're programmed to do. They will always catch it. So if you didn't program it to catch it, you don't have to worry about it in that sense, but they don't get tired. They don't get lazy. So they stay in their lane. They stay in their box.
As Zach mentioned, artificial intelligence has been around for well over a decade, despite the more recent buzz you've been hearing about ChatGPT. There are a lot of ways this technology is already being used every day. So we want to share a few examples with you of ways that utilities are using these tools. We have some in front of the meter uses here that are a little more operational. And then we also want to talk about customer engagement and communications tools, including the artificial intelligence solutions we're developing here at Questline Digital. One of the themes that you'll see throughout this entire discussion, and Zach just touched on it, and you'll see it again here with these operational examples, is the ability that AI has to ingest a lot of data quickly and then make the connections between all of those data points that can lead to identifying trends or making predictions based on those trends. So when you look at applications like analyzing the usage data coming from smart meters and then making decisions about energy needs or allocations on the grid, that is something that AI can handle very well in real time, drawing on thousands or millions of data points. And it's not just about making calculations. It's about finding patterns in the data that can then be extrapolated into predictions or propensity models. The same is true when it comes to detecting fraud, which is something that financial institutions are very good at. I'm sure we've all gotten a call or a text from a credit card company about a suspicious transaction. That's AI. Just as AI can recognize patterns in data, it can spot anomalies, unexpected moments in predicted behavior that may be signs of fraud. And utilities can apply that same approach to energy use as well. I love this image. This is like a little peek into the mind of artificial intelligence, where it's 100% certain that this line worker is wearing a helmet, but only 89% certain that he's a person. At least that's what the data says. So this image is from a company called Vizzo that has a platform that does this kind of visual pattern recognition using AI. And there are all sorts of applications for it, for utilities and beyond. This safety example is a good one. And the point is not just to make sure your line workers are wearing helmets, of course, but to identify and then proactively alert staff about any potential safety issues or equipment needs or any other need for an intervention. Vizzo suggests this technology can be used at unattended substations to detect foreign objects, detect intrusions, and recognize smoke and fire visually before other sensors might pick up those kinds of dangers. And again, these tools don't replace human judgment, but they can be used to help us be faster or more effective in our jobs by flagging these potential safety issues proactively and then helping people act quickly. So let's talk about customer engagement, which is, of course, right in our wheelhouse. AI has really been a boon in the fields of marketing and communications. And it's applications like writing that the new generative AI tools like ChatGPT have really captured the imagination. We have all seen examples of AI writing emails or articles or rap songs based on Edgar Allan Poe. And it's been fun, as Zach said, like just being able to play around with tools like that has made artificial intelligence very tangible to a lot of people. So we want to take a look at how some of those things are already being used, and then look ahead at what's coming next. So first, when it comes to automating communications, this is not a new tactic. Traditional marketing automation can send triggered messages based on a specific customer action or behavior. If a customer reads a content article about EV chargers, the marketing automation system sends a triggered message promoting the smart charger rebate program. That process traditionally is very linear. There's a single action that triggers a single message. With artificial intelligence, those capabilities can be much more nuanced and much more complex. And not just with many more possible outcomes, but potentially an infinite number of triggers. So again, AI can use all of this data and find all of these connections that humans just can't. AI can track all customer actions, all of the content the customer is reading, not just that one article about EV chargers. So there may be some combination of content consumption and behavior and demographics that indicates a customer is interested in EV charging. But it takes the AI to make that connection that we would never see, to recognize that pattern. And you can add energy consumption into the model. Maybe the person who needs info about smart chargers recently switched to an electric heat pump or an induction stove. We can see that in their energy use. So, there are all kinds of program recommendations we could make proactively with this automated marketing when you have AI looking for those patterns. AI can be just as helpful when it comes to customer segmentation. And again, humans are good at segmenting based on straightforward characteristics that may be obvious to us, but there are many other connections, shared interests, shared motivations that would make for a good customer segments, but it's just not obvious to humans. This is especially important when it comes to intent. Now, online retailers are really good at using AI to determine if a customer is ready to make a purchase. Google's ad platform is really good at this, determining intent and knowing, how likely is a customer to respond if you display a certain ad in front of them at that moment. For us, for utilities, we're much more interested in which customers have a propensity to sign up for a certain program or participate in a rate plan, for example. So we can use AI to identify that segment of customers that is likely to be interested in a program and why they might be interested. Then we can tailor the communications to them and not bother communicating with the customers who are not likely to be interested. What this all adds up to is a more personalized customer experience overall. It responds to customers' needs and interests. AI can help us identify customer preferences, create the right customer segments, and put promotions or content in front of the right customers who are interested in those topics. And believe me, we see this in every one of our performance metrics. Customers like that. They like personalization. When customers see that we know them, we're listening to their needs and communicating with them in ways that are relevant and actually help, that's what drives loyalty and customer satisfaction.
All right, so let's talk about a little bit further into those, what Brian just mentioned on some utility-specific use cases for AI. Our Welcome series actually has some AI baked into it. The graph that you see on the right is just one such workflow that we've mapped out that a customer of a utility could take when they sign up for service through your utility. So as you can imagine, going through onboarding, there's a lot of different options available to a utility customer. There's a lot of different things you'd like them to do, but just be aware of their options and preferences. So following through some of those pathways, they might be interested in signing up for auto pay in the billing program. They might also, conversely to that, sign up for a budget billing or a budget leveling program you have. You might also want to encourage them to sign up for a paperless bill. The important thing to note around our Welcome series is that depending on what action somebody takes, we can infer details around the type of customer that person is and automatically drop them into a segment bucket. The interesting thing is that we will drop them into a segment automatically, whether they take the desired action or not. Because even if someone does not enroll in autopay, for example, we can make inferences about that customer. So if somebody doesn't enroll in autopay, we might want to infer that they might be price sensitive or price conscientious. They want to pay attention to it a little bit more versus somebody that signs up for paperless. We might infer that that maybe they're a digital savvy user and that's the reason. We might also want to add an attribute of sustainability. That could be another reason they're interested in that. But again, based on those actions they take or do not take, we can again automatically sort and segment those folks. So every time someone signs up, selects an option behind the utility login page, we can actually then take those attributes and again drop those individuals into predefined segments for you. So even as your welcome series is running over time, these segments are growing naturally and organically as more people onboard through your welcome series. And then you have basically predefined audiences and buckets of folks that you can reach out to. So if you know that you've got a segment of folks that are particularly sensitive about high bills based on some of the selections and choices they've made as part of their onboarding. So then you can know, okay, ahead of the winter billing season, we might want to reach out to these folks proactively and communicate some things differently than we would a broader audience. And you can do that into any campaign, any series you might want to run throughout the year. The important thing is you don't have to go through the upfront effort to find who these people are and what they might be interested in. You've already done the homework just by the welcome series doing it for you. And again, that's a little bit of an AI running behind the scenes doing the legwork, but it does pay off again in dividends and multiple different springboards throughout the year. Another instance I want to talk about is chatbots. So I'm sure we've all used some kind of a chatbot on a site, whether to communicate directly with a service or organization or just get a quick answer, do compare notes. And the AI-driven chatbots are getting more and more better in the sense that it's harder to tell that it's not a human. I think when they originally rolled out chatbots, it was usually a human behind the scenes, and they were managing, anywhere from 10 to 15 chats, just typing furiously. There's also the cases of other chatbots that aren't quite as intelligent. Some, they don't quite know your answer, and if they don't recognize the answer, they will shuffle you on, to a human counterpart or direct you to a phone number or other resources you can call. But the best use of the chatbot that I've found so far is, again, the fact that AIs are driven off of how much data you can give them. If you create a library of answers and a library of information, overlay the chatbot on top of that, if you already know the types of questions that your customers are going to be asking you, you can already have those answers and that information as part of the library that the AI accesses. For example, if you know that you're going to be increasing rates and there's a series of questions that you expect your customers to ask you, you can already have those answers predefined, pre-written, give them into the library for the AI, the chatbot sits over top of it, and you can then deflect and mitigate just high call center volumes. If someone's just looking for that answer and they can get the same answer via a chatbot or an automated service the same way that they could from a live human, again, you can just take much, much more traffic doing the automated route. And the chatbot, again, I think the name of it can immediately lend itself to something on screen that you type and interact with that way. It can also be on your mobile device. It can also be just IVR. So it can be an automated voice message, but it can still be a chatbot. So it's one step beyond typing. They are actually hearing something that's verbal over the phone, but it does take that weight off of your call center and your call center agents. And the last one I want to talk about here is dynamic newsletters. Again, it's one of our product offerings that we have at Questline, where we can actually, through the power of an AI recommendation engine, we can deliver content that's unique to every one of your individual subscribers. So if you have a newsletter that you want to send out on a monthly cadence, we can actually ensure that each customer gets their own newsletter that's tailored to them based on their own interests, based on what previous content they've engaged with, what they've clicked on, what they've watched, time on page spent. And that's partly because of our delivery engine. That's also part because of the AI engine. And then, of course, that's backed fully by just our robust content library. So what that means is if you have a list of 100,000, we can say that, well, all 100,000 essentially get a unique dynamically curated newsletter on their behalf. In that case, it's a very customer-centric driven content piece, because you can ensure that a user and a customer is only getting content that they deem relevant. Of course, there's still options, obviously, to override some of that. If you know you absolutely want every single customer to get kind of a public service announcement or even new program information, you can certainly override that and still have the option to insert your own content. But again, as Brian mentioned earlier, what we're seeing is the more that you can personalize, the more that you can make highly relevant to the individual, the better. And I will honestly say the only way that we would be able to deliver such a curated and tailored newsletter is absolutely by using an AI engine behind it. There's just seemingly no way we would be able to crunch that amount. And again, it is quite literally millions of data points of behavior to analyze, to know what somebody clicked on, what somebody watched, and then be able to match the right content, the right format to that individual. And to drive that point a little bit further home, we actually have a demo of a page that's live now. We'll give you all the URL for it. You can check it out yourself, but you'll just land right on this screen here. You make a couple of selections based on the categories you're interested in, the formats of content you like. Tell us your name and email, and we will drop your own personal dynamic newsletter into your inbox in real time. You'll have it. You can see it. It should absolutely still be tailored to those selections you make. So it's something that we actually absolutely encourage you all to check out. It's a great way to give it a kind of a run for its money, a little bit of a test to see what it would look like. So then imagine that at scale across your own customer footprint as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Zach. Thanks, Brian. We're going to give them a quick breather here, and I'm going to launch another poll question for you. So that one is opening up to you now. The question is, to what level is delivering relevant one-to-one content to customers important to you? You can go ahead and choose your answer, with 1 or A being not at all important, all the way to 5 or E being extremely important. As a reminder, that one-to-one content is exactly what Zach was just describing. So giving each individual subscriber or customer content that is tailored just to them. So let me know how important this is to you and your utility right now. I'll leave that poll open for just another minute. All right, responses are still rolling in. You're going to hear it from me now, and you'll probably hear it from me again. Keep thinking of questions. Socks, everybody. They're great. All right, those responses look to have slowed down. I'm going to go ahead and close that out. So let's see what those responses were. So to what level was it important? It looks like 50% it's extremely important, followed right behind by important, and just a little bit of slightly important. So all important. I love to see that. That is great to know and great to see. So let's keep going now. We're going to talk about the limitations and best practices of AI before we jump into Q&A. So Zach and Brian, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Maureen. So on some of the limitations I want to talk about, we've talked about a lot of things that it can do. I want to talk about first what it cannot do, at least, again, just as of yet, because they're advancing it day by day. So for right now, the machine cannot understand your intent. So this gets into a little bit of what I mentioned earlier on why it's so critical and why it's so important that either you prompt like a generative AI with exactly what you want it to do and say, or you instruct and program the AI for exactly what kind of structure and boxes you want it to play in. It will not pick up on intent, again, on being able to read through that. Again, not yet, right? It does not understand nuance. It is very much a black and white system. It does not offer perspectives from multiple lenses. It won't give you competing views. Now, the interesting thing is you can, for example, you can ask a ChatGPT or a generative AI different prompts that do compete with one another, but you have to ask it in separate prompts. So you can say, pick this side of an argument and tell me it from this side. Now argue it from this side, and this point of view. You will have to. It will be 2 separate prompts, right? It will not give you it will not give you an opinion that it itself has. It will just give you like the facts and the things that it knows. And lastly, I do want to stress that it can be wrong. Certainly in the generative AI case, because they are trained off of just mountains and mountains and large data sets. They use multiple like ChatGPT, for example, uses multiple AI models to aggregate all of the answers and things that it spits back out to you. It still for sure can be wrong. It can be biased. It can be misused. You can definitely lead it in the direction that you want. Again, a lot of folks that you find out in the news cycles are kind of testing those limitations to see how far they can push it and drive it. You see that a lot more, of course, in the generative AI side. If you use like an AI engine or an AI algorithm behind the scenes, those things are much more black and white. They only do exactly what you tell them to do. It's very explicit. In that case, you don't run into the same instance of that. It's more of what Brian was talking about earlier, where if it comes across something it doesn't recognize, it will absolutely flag it as an anomaly, and basically all action stops until a human kind of comes in and weighs in on it. So just a few points there to look out for. And a few points I want to talk about in terms of best practices when you do implement AI strategies. You've heard me say this a few times now, but it starts with number one there at the top, following the data. AIs are only as good as the data you feed them, and the more data, the better. Beyond that, you want to know what kind of use cases that you want to use an AI for. Again, are you trying to find patterns or trends in a data set? Are you trying to find high propensity and likelihood of actions? You want to know what kind of use cases you're aiming for, because that's going to infer what data you prioritize and what actions you give more weight towards. And then from there, you want to set up those business goals. And how is AI going to help you for this? Are you looking to save time? Is it a productivity goal that you're after? Is it a convenience factor? Is it just insights and value that you want to deliver? With any project, you want to make sure that you set up, again, those metrics so you know how to measure your success. And of course, those metrics obviously have to be tied to very clear, tangible goals that you want to hit, what those milestone markers might be. And then from there, you can then go back into your data, kind of explore it. And so now that you've prioritized and given weight to different data sets, you know exactly what's going to rise to the surface and what data is less important. So you can kind of, again, it blends right into step 5 there, which is this cleaning the data. Anything that you've deemed irrelevant, you can remove. It just kind of muddies the waters a little bit in that regard. And so then you can, again, start to play around with how an AI gives preference and weight to certain things. For example, if I can give you a real example on our dynamic newsletter, our AI engine will prioritize and give preference to content categories and content types that a user has interacted with previously before. So for example, if a customer pays a lot of interest to articles about how to reduce their energy bill, the AI engine will reinforce that and try to serve up more content in that category for the user, because that has got a higher weight. It's got a higher preference to things. After when you get your data set in a really good, clean manner, there's a development and test cycle that happens that you absolutely want to just run, make sure everything's running smoothly before you put it into kind of a production environment. And that can, you can run it. It's surprisingly quick how quickly you can run things through that cycle and run those simulations. But that gives you a chance to see how it would run before releasing it to the real world, work out any kinks you might want to, or any backups, plans and things like that of that nature. Step 7 is pretty straightforward. Just put it into deployment. Once it's deployed, it's not just hands off, good jobs all around. It's definitely something that you want to maintain and review, again, because once it's live and it starts ingesting more and more data and new data, it's, again, not only going to get accurate, but once more data comes in, it can start to do more things. You're going to want it to do more things. It can do more complex things and more higher value things for you down the line.
That's great stuff. Thank you, Zach. So to wrap up here, a couple of important points to keep in mind. First of all, this stuff is fun and interesting and exciting. We are definitely really excited here at Questline Digital about what we'll be able to do with this new technology. But we also caution, don't get distracted by the shiny new AI tools. Don't feel like you need to go out and use all of these tools just for the sake of using them. It's like with any digital tool, any engagement tactic, you need to start with your business goals. what are your objectives and how do those objectives support your overall engagement strategy? And then once you've determined that, you can decide what is the best tool for reaching your objectives. And that may be AI, and that certainly gives us a lot of new capabilities, but it may not be, depending on what your goals are. So you want to make sure that you're guided by your goals and not the other way around. And secondly, don't ever be tempted to replace your judgment or your knowledge of your customers and your market with that of an algorithm. And I hope nobody got the impression from our discussion today that these artificial intelligence tools are going to replace people or the work of you and your employees. I really think of it as similar to the impact that a lot of other software, a lot of other digital tools have had on our work over the years. It's the way that Microsoft Word has helped writers, or the way that Photoshop and Adobe Creative Suite has helped the work of graphic designers. AI tools will improve our work. They will make us more effective and more efficient. But artificial intelligence still requires humans to operate. And in fact, being good at operating it is a skill it's a skill that will be in demand, as Zach mentioned. It's going to take the humans to leverage those results in strategic ways.
Awesome. Thank you both. Fantastic takeaways there. Like Brian said, there's a lot about AI out there right now. So I know that I have a lot of takeaways today, that how it relates to our industry. So I hope that you all have takeaways as well. I know that we are coming up on time here pretty quickly. Time flies when you're having fun. But let's put out one final poll question for you all. So that's poll is opening right now. The question is, would you be interested in a virtual assistant to help with your simplest and toughest energy questions? Simple response here. You go ahead and choose yes or no. For those who maybe remember Questline Digital's past service, Ask an Expert, this would be similar to that, but in a digital format. So just let me know. Does that sound something of interest or not? I'll just give it a quick second to get those answers, and then we'll roll right into Q&A. All right. I'm going to close it in 3, 2, and 1. All right, kind of half and half there. So thank you so much. We have heard about that from a few different people, so we wanted to gauge some interest in that. So thank you all so much for answering that. And with that, let's do Q&A, all right? Brian, Zach, you guys ready?
Yeah, sounds great.
All right. So first question here, Zach, I think I want to pass it to you. Elizabeth asks, is there a way to avoid being involved in ChatGPT? How will we avoid customers that request their information not be included in AI?
Sure, it's a great question. So it's on the ChatGPT side, it's going to scrape again any publicly available data. So anything that a customer has already put out, kind of voluntarily out into the World Wide Web, can be gathered by them. Anything obviously that's protected, behind logins and things of that nature, or in secure channels and things of that nature, it will not pull from. As it relates to your own instances and implementations of AI, if you take something in-house and want to use AI behind the scenes, you can actually opt to have somebody's data removed out of that algorithm if they so chose. It's certainly a request that you'd have to kind of take on and consider into account by having them removed from a data set. Again, you're going to have basically create a population that you're going to have some manual effort on and oversight on. But it is something certainly that you can control.
Great. Thanks, Zach. All right, next question here. Brian, I think I'll pass this one to you. Would you create a content interest category for customer assistance in the utility world?
Interesting. That's a great question. And I like it because customer assistance is a great example of how AI can help us better understand customers, identify customer needs, and then get program promotions, the customer assistance information in front of the customers who need it. But I would, as we think through how that would work, I would sort of separate the content side of it, the category that someone would opt in on the newsletter versus the program promotion, the identifying program propensity and then getting program information in front of them. So on the content side, we have a category, I think, called energy savings. And this is going to include information that may apply specifically to like a low income household or someone who qualifies for assistance. That's the kind of thing that through time, through interacting with the customer's content consumption, the AI will identify and serve the appropriate content. Kind of not exactly the same thing, but similar. There may be energy efficiency advice is often different for someone who owns a home or lives in a house versus a renter who lives in an apartment. And again, this is a great case where the AI, through understanding the kind of content that the customer is consuming, the AI knows like, well, this person is more likely to engage with content that energy efficiency content that's appropriate for an apartment. They're not going to they don't own a house, so they're not going to install new insulation, as an example. That same thinking applies to the energy saving content. Energy savings is the category, and then what are the kind of the specific characteristics for that customer that would apply to. And then on the program side, what's great about AI is, as we've mentioned, it's not just about a person even necessarily identifying themselves as needing customer assistance. As we know from our work with LMI programs, often customers don't even know that assistance is available, even if they are eligible. So, often the challenge isn't a customer opting into it. The challenge is getting the information in front of a customer who doesn't even know about it. And that's where AI can play a huge role. Think about, again, all of the characteristics that could play into a customer being eligible for assistance. Income, certainly, employment status, maybe, but, it can also come down to home value, billing history, energy usage, and that energy usage certainly is seasonal, if not, monthly. All of these different factors can play into identifying somebody who may be eligible and may need a customer assistance program. It's a perfect example of identifying that segment, identifying the need, and then getting that program information in front of the right customers.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. So unfortunately, we are at time. We're a little bit over, so thank you all for sticking with us. If you have to hop off, we understand. But just a few final takeaways here. First, Brian and Zach, thank you both so much. This is an exciting topic, and I appreciate all of the insights and advice that you shared today. Audience as well, thank you for those great questions. I think we had a few more come in, so we'll connect with you offline. But thank you for attending today. You really did knock our socks off. I had to say it. As a reminder, the follow-up email will be sent to all of you shortly with the presentation materials and the playback link. If you have any additional questions or feedback, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. There will also be a brief survey at the end of the event. If you can keep your browser window open and answer that final question, we'd really appreciate your feedback on today's webinar. Our next webinar will be next month, June 22nd, about outage communications. Registration will be open on our website soon, so stay tuned for that and keep that date available on your calendar. And that is all I have. So thank you again for attending, everybody, and have a fantastic day. Bye.